Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've driven the I-40 through New Mexico more times than I can count. It's the kind of highway that stretches on forever, cutting through empty desert where the only light comes from your headlights and maybe the moon if you're lucky. I'm a long-haul trucker. Been doing this for about 15 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything these lonely roads had to offer. But what happened to me last October changed the way I think about driving at night. It was just past midnight when I saw her. I was heading east, somewhere between Albuquerque and Tucumcari, when my headlights caught a figure standing on the shoulder of the road. A woman, maybe in her 30s, wearing a white dress that seemed too thin for the cold desert night. Her thumb was out, the universal sign for needing a ride. Now, I don't usually pick up hitchhikers. Company policy and common sense both say it's a bad idea. But there was something about seeing someone out there in the middle of absolute nowhere that made me slow down. I pulled over about 50 feet past her and watched in my side mirror as she walked toward the truck. There was something off about the way she moved. Too smooth, too deliberate. When she reached the passenger door, I leaned over and rolled down the window. "You okay, ma'am?" I called out. She looked up at me, and I got my first good look at her face. She was pale. Extremely pale, with dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises in the harsh light from my cab. But she smiled, and it seemed genuine enough. "I really need a ride," she said. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Just to the next town. Please." I hesitated. Everything in my gut told me this was wrong. But the next town was Tucumcari, maybe 40 miles down the road. 40 miles of nothing but desert and darkness. I couldn't leave someone out here. "All right," I said, unlocking the door. "Climb in." She pulled herself up into the cab with surprising ease, settling into the passenger seat without a word. As I pulled back onto the highway, I noticed she wasn't wearing shoes. Her feet were dirty, covered in dust and what looked like dried blood around her toes. The white dress was stained too, now that I could see it better. Dark stains that could have been dirt or could have been something worse. "What happened to you out there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Car breakdown?" She didn't answer right away. Just stared out the windshield at the road ahead, her hands folded in her lap. The cab was silent except for the rumble of the engine and the hum of tires on asphalt. "I was in an accident," she finally said. "A long time ago." The way she said it made my skin crawl. Not earlier tonight or a few hours ago. A long time ago. "You hurt?" I asked. "Should I take you to a hospital instead?" She turned to look at me then, and I swear the temperature in the cab dropped 10 degrees. Her eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, but the whole eye, like someone had filled them with ink. "You're Michael," she said. It wasn't a question. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I'd never told her my name. Hell, I hadn't even introduced myself. My name isn't on the truck, and I sure as hell wasn't wearing a name tag. "How do you know my name?" I asked, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. She smiled again. But this time there was nothing warm about it. "I know a lot of things, Michael. I know you have a daughter named Sarah. I know she's 7 years old. I know she has a birthmark on her left shoulder that looks like a butterfly." My heart was pounding now. Everything she said was true, every single detail, but there was no way she could know that. No possible way. "I know you weren't there when she was born," the woman continued, her voice still that unsettling whisper. "You were on the road. You were driving the same stretch of highway, actually. It was 3 in the morning and you got a call from your wife, but you didn't answer because you were tired and you wanted to focus on driving. By the time you called her back, Sarah had already been born for 20 minutes. I felt sick. That was my biggest regret, my deepest shame. Missing my daughter's birth because I was too stubborn to pull over and take a phone call. "What are you?" I managed to ask. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed ahead at the road. "Do you see that?" I looked. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Just the empty highway stretching out into the darkness, but then I noticed something in the distance. Lights. Red and blue lights flashing. As we got closer, I could make out the scene. A massive accident. A semi-truck jackknifed across both lanes, its trailer torn open like a tin can. There were police cars, ambulances, fire trucks. The whole road was blocked. "When did this happen?" I muttered, already slowing down. I hadn't heard anything on the CB about an accident. 3 hours ago, the woman said. The driver fell asleep at the wheel. He drifted into the other lane and hit a family in a minivan head-on. Everyone died. The driver, the mother, the father, and their 7-year-old daughter. My blood ran cold. 7 years old, the same age as Sarah. "The driver's name was Michael," she continued. "Michael Peterson. He was a long-haul trucker, just like you. He'd been on the road for 16 hours straight because he wanted to make good time, wanted to get home to see his daughter. He was so tired, Michael. So tired that he didn't even feel himself falling asleep. One moment he was driving, the next moment he was dead. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The accident scene ahead of us was getting closer, but something was wrong. The lights weren't moving. The emergency vehicles were there, but no one was walking around. No one was doing anything. "That's not real," I said, my voice shaking. "That's not happening." "It could be real," the woman said. "It could happen tonight, right now. You're tired, aren't you, Michael? You've been driving for 14 hours. You told yourself you'd stop at Tucumcari, but you were thinking about pushing through, weren't you? Just another few hours to make better time." She was right. I'd been thinking exactly that. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She turned to face me fully, and I could see that her skin was starting to look translucent, like I could see through it to something underneath. Something that wasn't human. "I want you to stop," she said. "Stop driving when you're tired. Stop putting other people at risk because you want to save a few hours. Stop being so selfish that you miss the important moments with your daughter because you're always on the road." The accident scene ahead was starting to fade, like it was being erased. The lights dimmed, the vehicles became transparent, and then it was all gone. Just empty highway again. "The next exit is Tucumcari," the woman said. "You're going to take it. You're going to find a motel and sleep for 8 hours, and then, when you wake up, you're going to call your daughter and tell her you love her. You're going to promise her that you'll be more careful, that you'll always answer when she calls." I nodded, unable to speak. Tears were running down my face, and I didn't even know when I'd started crying. "Good," she said softly. "Because if you don't, Michael, the next time you see me, it won't be in your truck. It'll be at an accident scene, and you won't be the one walking away." I looked away from the road for just a second to respond to her, and when I looked back at the passenger seat, she was gone, completely vanished. The seat was empty, and the door was still locked. There was no way she could have gotten out. But there was something on the seat where she'd been sitting, a small piece of paper folded in half. With shaking hands, I picked it up and unfolded it. It was a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Truck driver falls asleep at wheel, kills family of 3. The date on the newspaper was tomorrow's date, and the driver's name listed in the article was Michael Peterson. My name. I took the next exit. I found a motel. I slept for 10 hours straight, and when I woke up, I called Sarah. I told her I loved her. I promised her I'd be more careful. That was 3 months ago. I still drive the I-40, but I never drive tired anymore. I stop when I need to stop. I take breaks. I answer my phone when my family calls. And every time I pass that spot where I picked her up, somewhere between Albuquerque and Tucumcari, I slow down and look at the shoulder of the road. Part of me is terrified I'll see her again, but another part of me thinks maybe she saved my life that night. Maybe she saved someone else's life too. I kept that newspaper clipping. It's in my wallet right now. The date has long since passed, and that accident never happened. At least, not to me. But I look at it whenever I feel myself getting tired behind the wheel, whenever I think about pushing through for just a few more hours. Because I know she's out there, somewhere on that dark stretch of highway, and I know she's watching, making sure I keep my promise. I need to tell you about something that happened to me on Interstate 80 in Nevada. I've been going over it in my head for the past 6 months, trying to make sense of it, trying to find some logical explanation, but I can't. And I think maybe that's the most terrifying part. I was driving from Reno to Salt Lake City, a trip I'd made probably a dozen times before. It was late March, and I'd left Reno around 10 at night, planning to drive through the night and arrive in Salt Lake City by morning. I know, not the smartest decision, but I'd done it before without any problems, and I had a meeting I couldn't miss. The stretch of I-80 through Nevada is brutal. It's hours of nothing but darkness and desert, with gas stations few and far between. Around midnight, I was somewhere past Winnemucca, maybe an hour outside of Elko, as when I realized I needed to use the bathroom. Badly. I'd been watching for signs, but there was nothing. No gas stations, no rest stops, nothing. Just mile after mile of empty highway. I was starting to get desperate when I finally saw a sign illuminated in my headlights. Rest stop, 2 miles. Thank God, I thought. I'd driven this route enough times to know the rest stops, and I couldn't remember one being in this particular area, but maybe I'd just forgotten, or maybe they'd built a new one. Either way, I wasn't going to question my luck. 2 miles later, I saw the exit. There were no lights marking it, which was strange. Usually rest stops are lit up like Christmas trees, visible from miles away. But this one was dark. The only reason I even saw the turn-off was because my headlights caught the reflective sign at the last second. I took the exit, driving down a short access road that curved away from the highway. The rest stop sat about a 1/4 mile off the interstate, completely isolated. And when I say dark, I mean absolutely pitch black. Not a single light was on. Not in the parking lot, not in the building. Nothing. My first instinct was to turn around. Everything about this felt wrong. But my bladder had other ideas, and I figured I could just pull over somewhere near the building and take care of business quickly. It's not like anyone was around to see. I pulled into the parking lot, which was completely empty. The building itself was one of those typical rest stop structures. Squat, brick with separate entrances for men's and women's restrooms. There was a covered area in between with some vending machines and information boards. I left my engine running and my headlights on, pointing toward the building. Even with the high beams, the light barely seemed to penetrate the darkness. It was like the shadows were swallowing it up. I got out of my car, and the first thing I noticed was the silence. On the highway, even at midnight, there's always noise. The sound of distant traffic, the wind, something. But here, there was nothing. Absolute silence. It was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. The second thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't terrible, exactly, but it was strange. Like old pennies mixed with dust and something else I couldn't identify. Something organic and slightly sweet, like flowers that had been left in a vase too long. I walked toward the men's room entrance, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud in the silence. The door was propped open, which should have been convenient, but instead made me more nervous. I used my phone's flashlight to see inside. The bathroom looked normal enough. Stalls, urinals, sinks. Everything was clean, almost too clean, like it had just been scrubbed. The tiles on the floor were white and gleaming, and there wasn't a single piece of trash anywhere. For a rest stop in the middle of nowhere, it was weirdly pristine. I did what I came to do, moving as quickly as possible. The whole time I had this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. You know that sensation when every hair on your body stands up and your instincts are screaming at you to run? That's what I felt. I was washing my hands when I heard it. A sound coming from one of the stalls behind me, a soft scratching noise, like fingernails on wood. I froze, water still running over my hands. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking slightly. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. "Is someone there?" I tried again. Nothing. Just that oppressive, suffocating silence. I turned off the water and dried my hands as quickly as I could, never taking my eyes off the stalls. There were 3 of them, all with their doors closed. I hadn't checked them when I came in. Hadn't thought to. But now I was acutely aware that any one of those doors could swing open at any moment. I backed toward the exit, my phone light sweeping across the bathroom, and that's when I saw it. On the mirror above the sinks, written in what looked like condensation, were 2 words. "Don't leave." My heart nearly stopped. Those words hadn't been there when I was washing my hands. I would have seen them. They were right in front of me, impossible to miss. I ran. I don't care how that sounds. I got out of that bathroom and sprinted back to my car, my shoes slapping against the pavement. Behind me, I heard the bathroom door slam shut, even though I'd left it propped open. The sound echoed across the empty parking lot like a gunshot. I reached my car, yanked open the door, and threw myself inside. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the transmission into reverse. As I backed up, my headlights swept across the building one more time. There was someone standing in the doorway of the men's room, a figure, tall and impossibly thin, silhouetted against the darkness inside. I couldn't make out any details, but I could feel it watching me. And somehow, I knew it was smiling. I slammed the car into drive and floored it, tires squealing as I raced back toward the access road. In my rearview mirror, the rest stop was already disappearing into the darkness, but not before I saw the figure step out of the doorway and start walking toward where my car had been parked. Its movements were wrong, too jerky, too angular, like a puppet being controlled by someone who didn't quite know how humans moved. I made it back to the interstate and didn't slow down until I reached Elko 20 minutes later. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, which was bright and crowded and normal. I sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, just breathing, trying to calm down. When I finally felt steady enough to move, I went inside and bought a coffee. The cashier was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, and I felt compelled to ask her something. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Is there a rest stop between here and Winnemucca, maybe about 40 miles west?" She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, honey. The nearest rest stop going west is almost at the California border. There's nothing between here and Winnemucca except empty desert." "Are you sure?" I pressed. "Maybe something new that just opened?" "Positive," she said. "I've lived here my whole life, and they haven't built anything new on that stretch in over 20 years. Why? You looking for somewhere to stop?" "No," I said quickly. "No, I just thought I saw a sign, that's all. Must have been mistaken." But I wasn't mistaken. I know what I saw. I know where I stopped. And when I got home, I checked my car's GPS history. There's a gap. A 20-minute gap between when I left Winnemucca and when I arrived in Elko. According to the GPS, my car just disappeared from the interstate for 20 minutes. I've driven that route twice since then, both times during the day. I've looked for that exit, that rest stop. It's not there. There's nothing there but empty desert and scrub brush. No access road, no building, no sign, nothing. But I know it exists somewhere. In some version of that highway, in some layer of reality that occasionally overlaps with ours. And I know that thing is still there, waiting in the darkness of that bathroom, waiting for the next person who takes that exit at midnight. I don't drive at night anymore. Not on I-80, not anywhere. Because I keep thinking about those words on the mirror. Don't leave. And I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed. What that thing would have done. Where it would have taken me. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about all the missing persons reports you hear about, people who vanish without a trace on lonely highways, and I wonder how many of them saw a sign for a rest stop that wasn't supposed to be there. How many of them took that exit and never came back. I got lucky. I got out. But I don't think everyone does. If you're ever driving late at night and you see a rest stop that's completely dark, with no lights anywhere, trust your instincts. Don't take that exit. Hold it until you reach civilization. Because whatever's waiting for you in that darkness, it's not worth the risk. This happened last summer when I was driving from Nashville to Atlanta. I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep, so I'm on the road a lot, usually during normal business hours. But this trip was different. I'd had a late meeting that ran until almost 10 o'clock, and I'd made the stupid decision to drive home that night instead of getting a hotel. I merged onto I-24 around 10:30, and the highway was pretty empty. Just a few cars scattered here and there, and the occasional semi-truck. It was the kind of quiet night driving where you can almost zone out, just you and the road and your thoughts. About an hour into the drive, somewhere around Chattanooga, I noticed a truck behind me. A big 18-wheeler, white cab, no visible company markings. It wasn't tailgating or anything, just maintaining a steady distance behind me. Maybe 50 or 60 feet back. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Trucks on the highway are normal, but as the miles went on, I started to notice that it was always there. I'd speed up, it would speed up. I'd slow down, it would slow down. When I changed lanes, it would change lanes a few seconds later, always ending up behind me again. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was probably just a coincidence. We were both going the same direction at roughly the same speed. But something about it felt wrong. The way it maintained that exact distance, never getting closer, never falling back. Like it was tethered to my car somehow. Around midnight, I stopped at a gas station just off the interstate. I needed to use the bathroom and grab a coffee, and honestly, I wanted to see if the truck would keep going. If it passed me while I was stopped, I'd know I was just being paranoid. I pulled off at the exit, drove to the gas station, and parked under one of the bright lights near the entrance. I sat there for a moment, watching the interstate. And then I saw it. The white truck taking the same exit. It drove past the gas station slowly, almost like it was checking to see where I'd parked, then continued down the frontage road and disappeared around a corner. My heart was pounding. This wasn't a coincidence. This truck was following me. But why? I went inside, used the bathroom, and bought a large coffee, trying to act normal even though I felt like I was going to throw up from fear. The cashier was a young kid, maybe 19 or 20, and he barely looked up from his phone. I wanted to tell him what was happening, wanted to ask for help. But what would I even say? A truck was driving behind me on the highway. It sounded crazy even in my own head. I got back in my car and sat there, trying to decide what to do. I could call the police, but tell them what? That I felt like I was being followed? I had no proof, no license plate number, no evidence of any actual threat. Just a feeling. After about 15 minutes, I decided to get back on the highway. I figured if the truck was really following me, it would have left by now. Maybe it had stopped for gas or taken a different route. Maybe I really was just being paranoid. I merged back onto I-24, heading southeast toward Atlanta. For the first 10 minutes, I kept checking my rearview mirror, but there was nothing behind me except darkness. I started to relax. See? Just paranoid. Just tired and paranoid. And then I saw headlights, high up, bright. A truck, the white truck pulling up behind me from an on-ramp I'd passed a few miles back. It settled into that same position, 50 or 60 feet behind me, matching my speed exactly. Now I was terrified. This wasn't random. This truck had waited for me, had let me get ahead, and then caught back up. Whoever was driving it wanted me to know they were following me. I fumbled for my phone and called 911. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 911, what's your emergency? I'm being followed, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm on I-24 East, about 20 miles past Chattanooga. There's a truck that's been following me for over an hour. What kind of truck, ma'am? An 18-wheeler. White cab, no markings. It's been staying behind me this whole time, matching my speed. I stopped at a gas station and it stopped too, and now it's behind me again. Are they driving aggressively? Making threats? No, just following me. But I'm scared. This isn't normal. There was a pause. I could hear typing in the background. Ma'am, I'm going to dispatch a state trooper to your location. Can you tell me what mile marker you're near? I squinted at the signs passing by. Mile marker 165, I think. I'm in a silver Honda Civic. Okay, continue driving normally, and an officer will catch up to you shortly. Do not pull over. Do not exit the highway. Just keep driving until you see the patrol car, okay? Okay, I whispered. Please hurry. I kept the phone line open, even though the dispatcher told me I could hang up. I needed to hear another human voice, needed to know I wasn't alone. Behind me, the truck continued its steady pursuit. I could see the driver's silhouette in the cab, backlit by the lights from his instrument panel, but I couldn't make out any details. 10 minutes passed. 15. No sign of any police. The highway was empty except for me and the truck. We were in one of those sections where there's nothing on either side except dark trees and the occasional road sign. Where's the trooper? I asked, my voice breaking. It's been 15 minutes. They're on their way, ma'am. Just keep driving. And then the truck did something that made my blood run cold. It flashed its high beams at me, once, twice, 3 times. A signal, a message. I sped up, pushing my car to 80, then 85. The truck sped up too, maintaining that same distance. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face, my breath coming in short gasps. It's flashing its lights at me, I told the dispatcher. I'm going 85 and it's still there. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. The officer is almost to your location. Finally, I saw lights in the distance behind the truck. Red and blue, flashing. A state trooper. Relief flooded through me so intensely I almost felt dizzy. The patrol car came up fast, its siren wailing. As soon as the truck driver saw it, he suddenly accelerated, pulling around me and shooting past. He must have been going over 100 miles per hour. The trooper went after him, both vehicles disappearing into the darkness ahead. I slowed down, my whole body shaking. Another patrol car pulled up behind me and signaled for me to take the next exit. I did, following him to a well-lit truck stop where 3 other patrol cars were waiting. The officer who'd been following me got out and came to my window. He was older, maybe mid-50s, with a kind face that looked concerned. You okay, ma'am? He asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Can you tell me exactly what happened? I told him everything. How the truck had been following me since Chattanooga, how it had taken the same exit when I stopped for gas, how it had flashed its lights at me. He listened carefully, taking notes. Did you get a license plate number? He asked. No, I'm sorry. I was too scared to get close enough to see it. He nodded. That's all right. The trooper who went after him is trying to pull him over now. Can you describe the truck? White cab, no company markings. I couldn't see the trailer in the dark. Something flickered across his face then. Something that looked like recognition. What? I asked. Do you know something? He hesitated, then sighed. There have been reports. Over the past 6 months, maybe a dozen people have called in similar incidents. A white semi-truck with no markings, following people on I-24 for long distances. Always at night, always the same pattern. Has anyone been hurt? I asked, afraid of the answer. No, he said. But 3 months ago, a woman disappeared on this same stretch of highway. Her car was found abandoned at a rest stop near the Georgia border. No sign of her, no sign of struggle, just her car, with her purse and phone still inside. My stomach dropped. And you think it was this truck? We don't know, but the last call on her phone was to 911, reporting that she was being followed by a white semi-truck. We sat there in silence for a moment. Finally, I asked, "Did you catch him? The trooper who went after him?" The officer's radio crackled to life before he could answer. I couldn't make out the words, but I saw his face tighten. "What?" he demanded. "What is it?" "They lost him," he said quietly. He exited the highway about 10 miles up, and by the time the trooper followed, he was gone. There are dozens of back roads through that area. He could have gone anywhere. I felt sick. So he's still out there. Mom, I'm going to have another officer escort you to the Georgia state line, and I strongly recommend you don't drive this route alone at night anymore. They did escort me, 2 patrol cars, one in front and one behind. When we reached the state line, the Georgia State Patrol took over, following me all the way to the Atlanta city limits. I've never been so grateful to see city lights in my life. That was 4 months ago. I haven't driven at night since. I've changed my sales routes to avoid I-24 entirely. And I've been following the news obsessively, looking for any reports of that white truck. 2 weeks ago, I saw something that made my hands shake so badly I had to put down my phone. Another woman had disappeared on I-24, same stretch of highway, same circumstances. Her car was found abandoned at a rest stop. Her last call was to 911, reporting that she was being followed. I called the detective handling the case and told him my story. He thanked me for the information, but I could hear the frustration in his voice. They have no leads. No way to identify this truck or its driver. It's like he's a ghost, appearing and disappearing on that dark highway, hunting for his next victim. I think about that night constantly. I think about how lucky I was that I called 911 when I did, that the trooper arrived when he did. And I think about that woman who disappeared. Wonder what happened in those final moments. Did she pull over? Did the truck block her in somehow? Did the driver convince her to stop? If you're still listening, I have a question for you. If something is hunting you, relentlessly tracking you across miles of empty highway, what are you supposed to do? How do you escape something that can follow you anywhere, that can wait for hours or days until you're vulnerable? Because I don't think I escaped. I think he let me go. And sometimes, late at night, I look out my window at the street below, and I see a white truck parked at the corner. No lights, no markings, just sitting there in the darkness, waiting. It's probably not the same truck. Atlanta is a big city. There are thousands of white trucks. It's probably just a coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences anymore. I bought my CB radio at a truck stop outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. I'd been doing long-haul routes for about a year, and I was tired of driving in silence. I know most truckers these days use their phones to stay connected, but there's something about CB radio that feels more authentic, more connected to the history of the road. The guy at the shop set it up for me, tuned it to channel 19, which is the standard channel for highway traffic. He showed me how to use it, gave me the basics of CB etiquette, and sent me on my way. For the first few weeks, it was exactly what I'd hoped for. I'd hear other truckers chatting about traffic conditions, warning about speed traps, or just shooting the breeze to pass the time. It made the long hours behind the wheel feel less lonely. But then I started hearing the other voice. It happened for the first time on I-40, somewhere in the dead space between Little Rock and Memphis. It was around 1 a.m, and the CB had been quiet for almost an hour. I was fighting to stay awake, sipping bad coffee from a thermos and watching the white lines of the highway blur past. Then, static, and through the static, a voice. "Breaker 19, this is Nightbird. Anyone listening?" The voice was strange. Filtered through the static, yes, but there was something else wrong with it. It sounded hollow, echoing, like the person was speaking from inside a tunnel or a well. I picked up my handset. "This is, Road Dog." "Yeah, I'm listening. What's your 20? That's CB speak for location. Static again, louder this time. Then, "I'm right behind you, Road Dog." I looked in my mirrors. There was nothing behind me but darkness. No headlights, no cars, nothing. "I don't see you, Nightbird," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "You sure you got the right guy?" "Oh, I'm sure. Silver freight liner, number 3847 on the trailer. That's you, isn't it, Road Dog?" My heart skipped a beat. That was my truck, my trailer number, but no one could see that in the dark. Not from any distance. You'd have to be right next to me, close enough to read the numbers with a flashlight. I checked all my mirrors again, even leaned forward to check the blind spots. Nothing. The highway was completely empty. "Who is this?" I asked, no longer trying to sound casual. Laughter, cold, crackling laughter through the static. "I told you, I'm Nightbird, and I've been watching you, Road Dog, watching you for miles and miles." I turned off the CB. Just clicked it off, cutting through the static and that horrible voice mid-sentence. My hands were shaking. "It's just someone messing with me," I told myself. "Someone who saw my truck at a truck stop and decided to play a prank." CB radio signals can reach pretty far. He didn't have to be right behind me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I drove the rest of that night with my eyes constantly flicking to the mirrors, my shoulders tight with tension. A week later, I'd almost convinced myself it was just a weird prank. I was on I-70 in Kansas, another midnight run through empty farmland. I'd left the CB off since that night, but I was getting tired, and I figured some conversation might help me stay alert. So I turned it on. Immediately, through the static, "Hello again, Road Dog." That voice. That same hollow, echoing voice. "You missed me, didn't you? That's why you turned your radio back on. You wanted to hear from me." I grabbed the handset, anger pushing past my fear. "Listen, asshole, I don't know who you are or what kind of game you're playing, but knock it off. You're not funny." "I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to help you. You're going to need help soon, Road Dog. Very soon." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "Check your left rear tire. The one on the inside. You've got a slow leak. If you don't stop soon, it's going to blow. And when it does, at the speed you're going to lose control. You're going to cross the median and hit someone. Maybe a family. Maybe someone's children." "You're crazy," I said. But even as I said it, I was checking my gauges. The tire pressure monitoring system showed all tires normal. "Check it yourself if you don't believe me. There's a rest stop in 12 miles. Stop there, check the tire, you'll see." The radio went silent. Not just silent, but dead. Like it had been switched off, even though I could see the power light was still on. I drove the next 12 miles in a state of near panic. The logical part of my brain said this was impossible. There was no way someone on a CB radio could know about a tire problem I wasn't even having. But another part of me, the part that remembered that hollow voice saying my trailer number in the dark, told me to take it seriously. I took the exit to the rest stop. It was one of those big truck stops with fuel pumps and a restaurant. I parked in the truck lot and got out, grabbing a flashlight from my cab. The left rear tire looked fine, but I knelt down anyway, checking the inside dual tire like the voice had said, and I found it. A nail. Not just any nail, but a big 3-inch roofing nail buried deep in the tread. It wasn't leaking air yet, but it was there. If I'd kept driving, especially with the weight I was carrying, it absolutely would have caused a blowout eventually. I stood there for a long time, just staring at that nail, trying to understand. There was no way a random person on a CB radio could have known that was there. No way. I had the tire fixed at the truck stop, got back on the road, and drove straight through to Denver without stopping. I didn't turn on the CB radio. After that, I heard from Nightbird regularly. Not every night, but often enough that I dreaded turning on the radio. Sometimes he'd warn me about traffic problems before I reached them. Sometimes he'd tell me about speed traps that turned out to be exactly where he said they'd be. And sometimes he'd just talk, rambling monologues about the road, about the darkness, about all the people who died on these highways. "Do you know how many people die on American highways every year, Road Dog?" he asked me once. "Over 35,000. That's almost 100 people every single day, and every single one of them leaves something behind. An echo, a shadow. The roads are full of them if you know how to listen." "What are you?" I asked him. I'd stopped pretending he was just a prankster. Whatever Nightbird was, he wasn't human. "I'm what's left," he said. "I'm the voice of all the lonely drivers who never made it home. The ones who fell asleep at the wheel, who had heart attacks, who got in accidents. We're all still here, Road Dog, still driving these roads in the dark, and I'm the one who talks for us." "Why me?" I whispered. "Why are you following me?" "Because you listen. Most people, they just drive. They don't pay attention to the road, to what it's trying to tell them. But you listen, and that makes you special. That makes you one of us, almost." "I'm not one of you," I said firmly. "I'm alive. For now," Nightbird replied. And then he laughed, that cold, crackling laugh. "But the road is patient, Road Dog. It takes everyone eventually." That was 3 months ago. I've thought about quitting, about getting a different job, anything that doesn't involve long-haul trucking. But every time I try to fill out an application for something else, I can't do it. It's like my hands won't work, like something is stopping me. I think Nightbird was right. I'm one of them now, in some way I don't fully understand. Tied to these roads, to the darkness, to the endless white lines that stretch across America like veins. He still talks to me, almost every night. Sometimes he warns me about dangers, sometimes he just keeps me company through the long, empty hours, and sometimes, when I'm so tired I can barely keep my eyes open, I hear other voices too, dozens of them, hundreds maybe, all crackling through the static. All of them drivers who died out here, still running their routes through the darkness. Last week I passed a terrible accident on I-40. A semi-truck had jackknifed and rolled, blocking all lanes. Emergency vehicles everywhere. The trailer torn open and cargo scattered across the highway. As I crept past in the shoulder, I looked at the truck's cab. It was a silver Freightliner, the same model as mine. And through the shattered windshield, I could see the driver still strapped in his seat. Dead, obviously. But as I passed, his head turned. He looked right at me, and he smiled. That night, when I turned on my CB radio, there was a new voice. Not Nightbird, but someone else. Someone who introduced himself as Silver Fox. "Hey there," he said, his voice crackling with static. "First time calling in. Just wanted to say hi to all you drivers out there. I'm going to be on these roads for a long time. Forever, actually. And then he laughed. And I recognized that laugh. I'd heard it in my dreams, distorted and distant, but I knew it. It was the laugh of the driver in that wrecked freight liner. "Welcome, Silver Fox," Nightbird said. "We've been waiting for you." "I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know if I'll end up like them," another voice crackling through the static, warning other drivers, keeping them company in the darkness. Maybe that's the fate of everyone who drives these roads long enough. Or maybe Nightbird will warn me in time, will tell me when my number's up, will give me a chance to stop before it's too late. All I know is that I'm still driving, still running my routes through the night, still listening to the voices on Channel 19. And one day, maybe one night, when you're driving alone through the darkness and your CB radio crackles to life, you might hear me. You might hear my voice, hollow and echoing, coming through the static. And I'll be trying to warn you, trying to help you, because the road takes everyone eventually, everyone. But if you listen, if you pay attention, maybe you'll make it a little longer before it takes you too. If you're still listening, if you made it this far into the darkness with me, show it some love. Drop a like or a comment. Because stories like these, they need to be shared. They need to be heard. Otherwise, we're all just voices in the static, screaming into the void, hoping someone will listen. I'm a delivery driver for a medical supply company based out of Phoenix. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well, especially the overnight runs. Most of our deliveries are time-sensitive medical equipment, transplant organs, stuff that can't wait until morning. So I've gotten used to driving through the night, taking routes through empty stretches of highway, where I'm sometimes the only car on the road for miles. This happened last November on I-10, the stretch between Phoenix and Tucson. I'd picked up an organ transport cooler from a hospital in Phoenix, needed in Tucson by 4 a.m. It was around midnight when I hit the road, plenty of time to make the 2-hour drive. The highway was dead. Just me and the occasional truck, the desert stretching out dark and featureless on both sides. I had my music playing, some podcast about unsolved mysteries that I wasn't really paying attention to. Just something to fill the silence. About 40 minutes into the drive, I passed mile marker 211. I remember it specifically because I noticed I was making good time and started doing the math in my head about when I'd arrive. 10 minutes later, I passed mile marker 211 again. At first, I thought I'd misread it the first time. Maybe it had been 221, not 211, and I'd just seen it wrong in the dark, but I was sure. I distinctly remembered the number because I'd used it to calculate my arrival time. I shrugged it off. I was tired. I'd misread it. Simple as that. 10 more minutes passed. Mile marker 211. Now I was confused. I pulled out my phone to check my GPS, but there was no signal. Not unusual out here in the desert, but annoying. The map showed me on I-10, a straight line between Phoenix and Tucson, but without a live signal, it couldn't tell me exactly where I was. I kept driving. What else was I supposed to do? The highway looked normal. Same painted lines, same reflectors, same distance markers. Everything was exactly as it should be. Mile marker 211. Again. This time I slowed down, really looking at the sign as I passed it. It was the right size, the right color. A standard green Interstate mile marker with white numbers. 200 volt. There was no way I was misreading it. I sped up, pushing my van to 80 miles per hour. At that speed, I should cover 10 miles in 7.5 minutes. I watched my odometer carefully, watched the tenths of a mile tick by. 1.0 miles, 2.0 miles, 5.0 miles, 10.0 miles, mile marker 2 My heart was pounding now. This wasn't possible. This wasn't happening. I'd just driven 10 miles. I'd watched the odometer. I'd felt the time passing. But according to the mile markers, I was in the exact same spot. I tried to call someone, anyone, but my phone had no signal. I tried the radio, but all I got was static. Every station, just static. The podcast I'd been listening to had cut out at some point without me noticing. I kept driving. Maybe it was some weird issue with the mile markers. Maybe the state had screwed up and put multiple 2-on-1 signs along this stretch. It didn't make sense, but it was the only logical explanation. Mile marker 2-on-1, mile marker 2-on-1, mile marker 2-on-1. I'd been driving for over an hour now. I should have been in Tucson already, but every 10 minutes, like clockwork, I passed that same mile marker, the exact same sign. I started looking for any other landmarks, anything to prove I was actually moving forward. But there was nothing. Just empty desert, dark sky, and that endless highway stretching ahead into my headlights. That's when I started to notice other things. Small things at first. Like how the center line seemed to be slightly off in places, painted at weird angles. Or how there were no insects hitting my windshield, which was strange for a desert highway at night. Or how my fuel gauge hadn't moved at all, even though I'd been driving for over an hour. And the temperature. It had been a cool night when I left Phoenix, maybe 60 degrees, but it was getting colder, much colder. I could see my breath fogging in the air, even though my heater was on full blast. Mile marker 211. I screamed. I actually screamed, a raw, terrified sound that echoed in the enclosed space of my van. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I was stuck in some kind of loop, driving the same stretch of highway over and over, and I had no idea why or how to stop it. I considered pulling over, just stopping the van and waiting. But the thought of sitting still in this place, on this impossible highway, terrified me even more than the idea of driving endlessly in circles. So I kept going, mile marker 211, mile marker 201, mile marker 201. Around what should have been 2 a.m., something changed. I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. Another vehicle coming up behind me fast. Relief flooded through me. Another person. Another actual human being. Maybe they could tell me what was happening. Maybe they were trapped too, or maybe they'd know how to get out of this. I slowed down to let them catch up. The headlights got brighter, closer. But something was wrong with them. They were too bright, almost blinding, and they were the wrong color. Not the warm yellow-white of normal headlights, but a harsh, cold blue-white that hurt to look at. The vehicle pulled up right behind me, close enough that its headlights filled my entire van with that strange light. I couldn't see what kind of vehicle it was. The light was too bright, washing out everything in my mirrors. I sped up. The vehicle sped up. I slowed down. The vehicle slowed down, maintaining that exact same distance, always just close enough that I couldn't see past the glare of its headlights. And then my radio, which had been silent except for static, suddenly crackled to life. A voice. A woman's voice, but distorted, like it was being played backward and forward at the same time. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. "This road isn't for you." "Where am I?" I shouted at the radio, even though I knew that wasn't how radios worked. "How do I get out?" "You can't get out. No one gets out. This is where we live now. This is where we'll always be. Driving. Always driving. Mile marker 211. "No," I said, tears streaming down my face. "No, that's not real. This isn't real." "It's real to us," the voice said. "We thought the same thing once. We thought we could escape. But the road keeps us. The road always keeps us." The vehicle behind me suddenly accelerated, pulling up alongside my van. I finally got a look at it, and I wish I hadn't. It was a car, an old sedan, maybe from the 1970s. But it was wrong. The color was wrong, this sick greenish gray that no car had ever been painted. And the windows were dark, completely opaque, like someone had covered them with black paper. But I could see something moving behind that darkness. Shapes, figures, pressing against the windows from the inside, like they were trying to get out. The car matched my speed exactly, staying right next to me. I could hear things now, sounds coming from inside that car, screaming, sobbing, the sound of hands beating against glass. "Join us," the voice on the radio said. "It's easier if you join us. Fighting just makes it hurt more." I did the only thing I could think of. I jerked my steering wheel hard to the right, veering off the highway into the desert. My van bounced and jolted over the rough ground, my headlights illuminating scrub brush and rocks and sand. Behind me, the car with the dark windows stayed on the highway, but that cold blue-white light was still visible, just sitting there, watching. I drove into the desert for what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 or 15 minutes. My van wasn't made for off-road driving, and I was terrified I was going to pop a tire or get stuck, but I kept going, putting as much distance as I could between myself and that highway. Finally, I came to a wash, a dry creek bed that was too steep to cross. I stopped the van, turned off my headlights, and just sat there in the darkness, trying to breathe, trying to think. That's when I noticed the light. Not the cold blue-white of the car's headlights, but a warm orange glow, off to my left. I turned my head and saw, maybe half a mile away, what looked like a gas station. Lights on, open for business, sitting in the middle of the desert like it was the most normal thing in the world. I restarted my van and carefully picked my way across the wash and toward the lights. As I got closer, I could see it was indeed a gas station. An old one, like something from the 1950s, with rounded pumps and a small building with a neon sign that said, "Open." There was one other vehicle there. A pickup truck parked near the building, rusty and covered in dust. But the lights were on inside the station and I could see someone moving around. I parked my van and got out on shaking legs. The air was normal temperature now, not the freezing cold it had been on the highway. I could hear normal desert sounds, insects, the wind, the distant howl of a coyote. Real sounds. Normal sounds. I walked to the door of the gas station and pushed it open. A bell dinged. The man behind the counter looked up at me and smiled. He was old, maybe 70, with weathered brown skin and kind eyes. "You look like you've had a rough night," he said. I almost collapsed. I was trapped on the highway. I kept passing the same mile marker over and over. There was a car and voices on my radio, and He held up a hand, his expression grave. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to a worn stool near the counter. "You're not the first person to come in here with that story." I sat. My legs literally wouldn't support me anymore. "What happened to me?" I whispered. He sighed, pulling out 2 bottles of water from a mini fridge and handing me one. "There's something wrong with that stretch of highway. Has been for as long as I've been here, and I've been here 40 years. Every few months, someone ends up in that loop. Stuck driving the same 10 miles over and over, thinking they're going crazy. But how? How's that possible?" He shrugged. "Don't know the how. Don't really want to know, if I'm being honest. Some things you're better off not understanding. What I do know is that the only way out is to leave the highway, drive into the desert. That's what breaks the loop." The car that was following me. The people trapped inside. "They didn't figure it out," he said quietly. "Or they couldn't do it. Too scared to leave the road, maybe. So they're still there. Still driving, still trapped." We sat in silence for a moment. "How do I get to Tucson?" I finally asked. He walked to the window and pointed. "See that glow on the horizon? That's the city. You're actually only about 15 miles out. The loop brought you in a big circle, but you're close. There's a frontage road about a quarter mile that way. Take it south, and it'll bring you to the I-10 junction, well past mile marker 211. You'll be safe." I thanked him profusely and bought some snacks and coffee, even though I wasn't hungry or thirsty. I just needed to give him money, needed to prove to myself that this place was real and normal and safe. As I was leaving, He called out to me. "Hey, if you ever have to drive that stretch again, do it during the day. The loop only works at night. Don't ask me why. That's just how it is." I found the frontage road exactly where he said it would be. I followed it to the I-10 junction and merged back onto the highway. My GPS signal returned immediately, showing me 12 miles from Tucson. I'd lost almost 3 hours in that loop, but I still made my delivery on time. That was 8 months ago. I've driven that stretch of I-10 probably 24 times since then, but always during the day, like the old man said. And every time I pass mile marker 211, I slow down and look at it carefully. It's just a normal mile marker, just a sign. But last week I had to make an emergency overnight run. A late-night pickup that meant driving that stretch around 1 a.m. I tried to tell my boss I couldn't do it, but I couldn't exactly explain why. So I took the run. I drove that stretch at 80 miles per hour, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I watched the mile markers carefully. 209, 210, 211, and I kept going. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I was past it. I was safe. But then my radio, which had been playing music, cut to static. And through that static, I heard a voice. The same woman's voice from before. "You came back," she whispered. "We've been waiting. We've been so lonely." I turned off the radio. I drove the rest of the way to Tucson in silence, my heart pounding, watching my mirrors for any sign of cold blue-white headlights. They didn't appear, but I know they're still out there, still waiting, still driving their endless loop on mile marker 211. And I know that one of these nights, if I'm unlucky enough to get caught in that loop again, I might not figure out how to escape. I might become one of them, one more shape pressing against the dark windows of that impossible car, trapped forever on a highway that doesn't exist. Driving, always driving, mile marker 211. I'm a security guard for a private security company based in Wyoming. Most of my work is pretty boring. Patrolling office buildings, checking that doors are locked, that kind of thing. But sometimes I get assigned to special details. Long-distance transport security, usually for valuable cargo, jewelry, high-end electronics, cash transfers. The kind of stuff that needs an armed guard watching over it during transport. This particular job was a currency transfer. A bank in Casper needed to move $500,000 in cash to a Federal Reserve facility in Denver. I was hired to ride along in the armored car as the security detail. It was supposed to be a simple overnight drive down I-25, arrive in Denver by morning, easy money. We left Casper around 11 p.m. Me and the driver, a guy named Rick who'd been doing armored transport for 15 years. The weather forecast was clear. The route was straightforward, and we had a police escort for the first 50 miles. Everything was going according to plan. About 2 hours into the drive, somewhere south of Chugwater, Rick started complaining about stomach pains. At first, it was just mild discomfort, but it got worse fast. Within 10 minutes, he was pale and sweating, clutching his stomach and groaning. "I need to stop," he said through gritted teeth. "Something's really wrong." "Can you make it to the next town?" I asked, looking at the GPS. We were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by empty plains and darkness. "No, I can't. I think I'm having an appendicitis or something. It hurts so bad I can't think straight." He pulled over onto the shoulder, and I immediately called 911. The dispatcher said an ambulance would be there in 30 minutes. We were in a rural area, and the nearest hospital was in Wheatland. She told Rick to stay still and not to eat or drink anything. So we waited. I kept my gun out, more out of procedure than any real sense of danger. We were in the middle of nowhere. There was no traffic on the highway, just us, the darkness, and the wind blowing across the plains. That's when I noticed the emergency call box. It was about 50 feet ahead of us on the shoulder. One of those bright orange boxes you sometimes see on highways, equipped with a phone for emergencies. I'd seen dozens of them over the years and never thought twice about them. But as I sat there watching Rick moan in pain, I noticed something odd. The call box was glowing. Not just the reflective paint catching our headlights, but actually glowing. A soft, pulsing blue light was emanating from inside it, like something was lit up inside the box. "Do you see that?" I asked Rick, pointing. He glanced up briefly, his face twisted in pain. "See what?" "The call box. It's glowing. I don't see anything, man. I'm dying here." I stared at it. The pulsing continued, rhythmic and steady, and then, as I watched, the phone inside the box began to ring. I could hear it even through the closed doors of the armored car, a shrill, old-fashioned ring, the kind of sound analog phones used to make. It rang once, twice, 3 times. "Someone should answer that," I said, not sure why I was saying it. "What are you talking about?" Rick groaned. The phone kept ringing, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I opened the door and stepped out of the armored car. The night air was cold, and the wind carried the smell of sagebrush and dust. The phone was still ringing, each ring seeming to echo across the empty landscape. I walked to the call box. Up close, that blue glow was even more pronounced. It was coming from inside the phone receiver itself, pulsing in time with the rings. I reached out and opened the box. The phone was an old rotary style, the receiver hanging on a hook. It was ringing even though no one could have possibly called it. These emergency boxes don't work that way. They're direct lines that you use to call out, not receive calls. But it was ringing. I picked up the receiver and held it to my ear. "Hello?" Static, loud, crackling static that hurt my ears. And then, through the static, a voice. A man's voice. Very faint and distant. "Help me." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "Please help me. I'm trapped. I don't know where I am. I've been driving for so long and I can't find my way out." "Where are you?" I asked, looking around at the empty highway. "Are you broken down? Do you need assistance?" "I don't know where I am. The signs all say the same thing. Mile marker 247. It always says mile marker 247. I keep driving, but I never get anywhere else." My scalp prickled. I looked at the nearest mile marker, just visible in the light from the armored car. Mile marker 247. "Sir, I'm at mile marker 247. If you're here, I should be able to see you." "You can't see me," the voice said, and there was a terrible desperation in it. "No one can see me. I've been here for so long, years maybe, or days. I can't tell anymore. Time doesn't work right here. Sir, listen to me." His voice became more urgent, cutting through the static. "You're in danger. The woman in the white dress. She's coming. She walks the highway at night, looking for people who've stopped. If she reaches you, you'll end up like me. Trapped forever." "What woman?" I looked up and down the highway. It was empty, nothing but darkness and pavement. "She's coming. I can see her on my road. She's always coming. You have to drive. You have to get away from there. If you stay stopped for too long, she finds you." "Sir, my driver is hurt. We're waiting for an ambulance." "It's a trap," he screamed, his voice distorting through the phone. "There's no ambulance coming. She makes you think there's a reason to stop, a reason to stay in one place. But it's all her. She's doing it, and when you're vulnerable, when you're not paying attention, she appears." My hands were shaking. I turned to look back at the armored car. Rick was still hunched over in pain, illuminated by the dome light. Everything looked normal. "I don't understand," I said into the phone. "Behind you," the voice whispered. "Don't turn around. Don't look. Just walk very slowly back to your vehicle. Get in. Drive away. Don't stop until you reach the next town." Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around, to look. But something in his voice, the pure terror in it, stopped me. I started walking backward toward the armored car, keeping my eyes forward, my hand on my gun. "That's good," the voice encouraged me. "Keep going. She's about 30 feet behind you now. She's just standing there watching. Don't look at her. If you look at her, she'll know you can see her, and then she'll come for you." I reached the armored car and fumbled for the door handle, my eyes still locked forward. I could see my reflection in the windshield, and behind that reflection, I could see the highway behind me. It was empty. But as I watched, something changed. A figure materialized out of the darkness, maybe 30 feet away, exactly like the voice had said. A woman in a long white dress, standing perfectly still on the shoulder of the road. Her hair was long and black, hanging down to her waist, and even though I couldn't see her face clearly, I knew she was looking at me. "Get in the vehicle," the voice on the phone urged. "Now!" I yanked open the door and threw myself inside, slamming it behind me. "Rick, start the engine. We need to go. Now!" He looked at me, his face still pale but no longer twisted in pain. "What? We can't leave. The ambulance—" "There's no ambulance," I shouted. "Start the fucking engine." He must have heard something in my voice because he didn't argue. He turned the key, and the engine roared to life. I looked in the side mirror. The woman was closer now, much closer. She'd covered those 30 feet in the few seconds it had taken me to get into the car. She was maybe 10 feet away, and now I could see her face. It was wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. The features were human, eyes, nose, mouth, but they were arranged in a way that made my brain hurt to look at. Like something had tried to make a human face but had gotten the proportions slightly off. Her eyes were too far apart. Her mouth was too wide, and she was smiling. "Drive!" I screamed. Rick slammed the accelerator, and the armored car lurched forward. I kept my eyes on the side mirror, watching as the woman in white receded into the distance. She didn't move, just stood there on the shoulder, still smiling, watching us disappear down the highway. We drove for 20 minutes in complete silence, both of us gripping our seats, neither of us willing to speak. When we finally passed a sign for wheatland, 5 miles, Rick let out a long, shaky breath. "What the hell was that?" he finally asked. "I don't know." "And why did we leave?" "I really was hurting, man. I needed that ambulance." I looked at him. His color had returned. He was sitting normally, no longer hunched over in pain. "How do you feel now?" I asked. He paused, seeming to take stock of himself. "Fine, actually. The pain just stopped. Like someone flipped a switch." We reached Wheatland and pulled into a 24-hour truck stop. I was shaking so badly I could barely walk. Rick called the company to report what had happened, or at least the version of what happened that wouldn't make us sound insane. He said he'd had stomach pains. We'd pulled over, but he'd felt better after a few minutes and we'd continued on. I didn't mention the phone call. I didn't mention the woman in white. What would I even say? But as we sat in the truck stop, drinking coffee and trying to calm down, I couldn't stop thinking about that voice on the phone. The man who said he was trapped, driving endlessly past the same mile marker. Was he still there? Still trying to call for help? I pulled out my own phone and did something I probably shouldn't have. I called the highway patrol and asked if there had been any reports of stranded motorists near mile marker 247 on I-25. The dispatcher checked her computer. "No, sir. No reports in that area. Is someone in need of assistance?" "No," I said quickly. "I just thought I saw something. Must have been my imagination." But before I hung up, I asked one more question. "Have there been any reports of strange occurrences on that stretch of highway? People going missing, unexplained incidents, anything like that?" There was a long pause. "Why do you ask, sir?" "Just curious." Another pause. Then, carefully. "There have been reports, over the years. Drivers who have called in saying they were being followed by a woman in white. A few vehicles found abandoned with no sign of the drivers. But nothing we could ever substantiate. No evidence of foul play. Just strange circumstances. How many people? I asked. 7, she said quietly. 7 people have disappeared from that stretch of highway over the past 12 years. All of them stopped at or near mile marker 247. I thanked her and hung up. 7 people. 7 people who'd stopped at that mile marker and never been seen again. Was that man on the phone one of them? Was he still out there somehow, trapped in some version of that highway that overlapped with ours? We delivered the money to Denver without any further incidents. I wrote up my report, collected my pay, and told my company I was taking some time off. I couldn't explain why, not in any way that would make sense. That was 4 months ago. I've thought about going back, about driving to mile marker 247 and looking for that call box. Maybe stopping and waiting to see if the phone rings again. Maybe trying to help that man, whoever he is, wherever he is. But I don't think I will, because I think if I go back, if I stop at that marker again, the woman in white will be waiting. And this time, she won't just stand there watching. This time, she'll know that I can see her. And I think that's when she comes for you. When you acknowledge her existence, when you look directly at her and recognize what she is. So I stay away. I took a new assignment, one that doesn't involve any highways at night, and I try not to think about that voice on the phone, pleading for help, saying he's been trapped for years in a place where time doesn't work right. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder how many others there are. How many voices trapped in phones that never stop ringing, in cars that never reach their destinations, on highways that exist in the spaces between the real world and something else. And I wonder if, someday, someone will answer a phone and hear my voice. Calling from mile marker 247, begging for help, saying I've been driving for so long and I can't find my way out. My name is Jennifer, and I've been a state highway patrol officer for 8 years. I've seen a lot in that time. Fatal accidents, drug busts, high-speed chases. You deal with it, you write the report, and you move on. That's the job. But what happened to me last February has made me question everything I thought I knew about this job, about reality in general, if I'm being honest. It was a Tuesday night, around 2 a.m., I was patrolling I-84 in eastern Oregon, the stretch between Pendleton and Baker City. It's desolate out there, especially in winter. Miles and miles of high desert, very little traffic, lots of opportunities for speeders to think they can get away with breaking the law. I was parked in a median turnaround, running radar, when I saw a car approaching from the west. It wasn't speeding, doing maybe 65 in a 70 zone, but something about it caught my attention. It was an older model sedan, maybe from the early 2000s. Dark color, hard to tell exactly in the darkness. But what struck me was that it was wobbling slightly, drifting between lanes like the driver might be impaired or drowsy. I pulled out behind it, following at a distance to observe. The car continued its erratic pattern, crossing the center line, then overcorrecting and nearly hitting the shoulder. Classic signs of a DUI or a driver falling asleep at the wheel. I hit my lights and siren. The car didn't respond, didn't slow down, didn't pull over, just kept driving, maintaining that same 65 miles per hour, wobbling between lanes. I hit the siren again, longer this time. Still no response. Now I was concerned. Maybe the driver was having a medical emergency. Maybe they'd passed out. I pulled up closer, trying to see into the vehicle. But the back windshield was too dark, either tinted or covered with something. That's when I noticed it didn't have brake lights. I mean, none at all. When a car slows down even slightly, the brake lights come on. It's automatic. But this car's lights never flickered. Not once. I called it in. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I'm in pursuit of a vehicle, Oregon plates. I squinted at the license plate. but something was wrong with it. The numbers and letters seemed to shift and blur every time I tried to focus on them. Unable to read the plate, vehicle is failing to yield. Requesting backup. Copy that, Unit 47. What's your location? I looked at the mile markers. Mile marker 312. Heading east on I-84. Backup is 15 minutes out. Do you want to attempt a pit maneuver? I considered it. A pit maneuver, precision immobilization technique, involves using your patrol car to tap the rear quarter panel of the fleeing vehicle, causing it to spin out. It's risky, especially on a highway, but sometimes necessary. Negative, I said. I'm going to try to get alongside and signal the driver. I accelerated, pulling up next to the car in the left lane, and that's when I got my first good look at the driver. There wasn't one. The driver's seat was empty, completely empty. No one was driving the car. I swerved, nearly losing control of my patrol car. What the hell? I dropped back, my heart pounding. That wasn't possible. I'd seen wrong. I must have seen wrong. The angle was bad. The darkness was playing tricks on my eyes. I pulled up alongside it again, this time using my spotlight to illuminate the interior. Empty. The driver's seat was absolutely empty. But the steering wheel was moving, turning slightly to correct the car's drift, like invisible hands were guiding it. And then the car looked at me. I know how that sounds. Cars don't look at anything. But I swear, the entire vehicle seemed to turn its attention toward me. The passenger window rolled down, even though there was no one inside to roll it down. Through that open window, I heard screaming. Multiple voices, men and women and children, screaming in terror and agony. The sound was overwhelming, filling my patrol car even though the windows were closed. I slammed on my brakes, falling back. The screaming cut off as soon as I was behind the car again. The passenger window rolled back up. Unit 47, what's your status? Dispatcher's voice crackled through my radio. My voice was shaking. Dispatch, there's no one driving the vehicle. The driver's seat is empty. Say again, Unit 47. The vehicle is operating without a driver. I don't know how. I don't know what I'm looking at. Silence on the radio. Then, Unit 47, are you feeling all right? Do you need medical assistance? I'm fine. I'm telling you, there's no driver in this car. It's impossible, but it's what I'm seeing. Backup is 10 minutes out. Stay with the vehicle, but maintain distance. Do not engage. I stayed behind it, following at a safe distance, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The car continued its steady path east, wobbling between lanes, moving at exactly 65 miles per hour. My training told me there had to be a rational explanation. Maybe it was some kind of self-driving car, an early prototype that had malfunctioned. Maybe the driver was slumped down, hidden from view. Maybe I was having a stroke or a psychotic break. But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew what I'd heard, those screams. After about 5 minutes, the car began to slow down. Not rapidly, just a gradual deceleration. 65, 60, 55, 50. And still no brake lights. It pulled off at an exit, the sign indicating a rest area 2 miles ahead. I followed, radioing my new position to dispatch. The rest area was coming up fast, a dark cluster of buildings set back from the highway. The car pulled into the rest area parking lot and came to a complete stop in the center of the lot, far from any other vehicles. The engine shut off. The headlights went dark. I stopped my patrol car about 50 feet away, angling it so my headlights illuminated the vehicle. I sat there for a moment, my hand on my gun, trying to decide what to do. Dispatch, the vehicle has stopped at the rest area at exit 318. No occupants visible, requesting further instructions. Backup is 5 minutes out. Wait for assistance before approaching the vehicle. But as I sat there watching, something started happening to the car. It began to sink, not like it had flat tires, but like it was melting into the pavement. The body of the car seemed to lose its solidity, becoming translucent, almost ghost-like. And then I saw them. Figures inside the car, dozens of them, packed into a space that should only hold 5 people. They were pressed against the windows, their faces twisted in expressions of terror and pain. Men, women, children, all of them screaming silently, their mouths open, their hands pressed against the glass. I got out of my patrol car, without thinking, my gun drawn, moving toward the vehicle. I know it was against protocol. I know I should have waited for backup. But I couldn't just sit there watching those people trapped inside. "Hello," I called out. "This is the Oregon State Police. Exit the vehicle with your hands up." The figures inside were becoming clearer as I got closer. I could see details now. A woman in a business suit, a man in a flannel shirt, 2 children in the back seat, all of them looking at me with desperate, pleading eyes. I reached for the door handle. As soon as my fingers touched the metal, everything changed. The screaming started again, but this time, it was in my head, inside my mind. All those voices, all that pain and terror flooding into me. I saw flashes of images, a crash, fire, metal tearing, the same crash over and over, repeating endlessly. These people trapped in the moment of their death, reliving it forever. I yanked my hand back, and the vision stopped. The car was solid again, opaque. The figures were gone. It was just an old sedan sitting in a parking lot. Backup arrived a moment later. 2 more patrol cars, lights flashing. My sergeant got out, walking over to me. "Peterson, what the hell's going on?" I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come out right. How could I explain what I'd seen, what I'd felt? He looked at the car, then back at me. "There's no one in there." "No, sir." He approached it carefully, using his flashlight to peer inside. "Empty, just like you said." He tried the door handle. It was unlocked. He opened it. The screaming started again. I could see on his face that he heard it too. His eyes went wide and he stumbled backward, letting the door slam shut. The screaming stopped. "What was that?" he whispered. We called in a tow truck and had the vehicle impounded. Running the VIN number gave us an answer that made my blood run cold. The car was registered to a family from Portland, a family that had died in a crash 6 years ago on I-84, not far from where I'd first seen the vehicle. They'd been driving at night when a semi-truck crossed the median and hit them head-on. The car had caught fire. All 4 occupants, mother, father, and 2 children, had died at the scene. The car itself had been totaled, crushed, and burned beyond recognition. It should have been scrapped years ago. So what was I following? What had pulled into that rest area? The impound lot called 2 days later. The car was gone. The gate was still locked. The security footage showed no one entering or leaving. But the car had vanished sometime during the night. A week later, I was patrolling the same stretch of highway. Around 2 a.m., I saw it again. The same dark sedan, wobbling between lanes, no brake lights. I didn't pull it over this time. I just watched it pass, those dark windows hiding whatever was inside. And I wasn't the only one. Over the next few months, I heard reports from other officers. A car with no driver seen at night on I-84, always heading east, always around 2 a.m., always near the site where that family died. I've started to think of it as a ghost, though that word doesn't quite fit. It's more like an echo. A moment of tragedy so intense it burned itself into reality, replaying over and over. Those people are still in that car, still experiencing that crash, still screaming, and sometimes, when I'm patrolling late at night, I wonder about all the other crashes I've worked, all the other fatalities I've seen on these highways. How many of them are still out there, trapped in their final moments, driving endlessly through the darkness? Last month, I requested a transfer to day shift. My sergeant approved it without asking questions. I think he understands. I think he sees that car sometimes too, in his nightmares. Because that's where I see it now. Every night when I close my eyes, that dark sedan with no brake lights, full of screaming faces pressed against the windows, and I hear them calling to me, asking me to help them. But there's nothing I can do. They're beyond help, beyond rescue. They're trapped in that moment forever, and all I can do is watch them drive past, heading east into the darkness toward a destination they'll never reach. I work as a medical courier, transporting specimens and blood samples between hospitals and labs. It's time-sensitive work. Some of these samples have to reach the lab within hours of being taken, or they're useless. So I do a lot of late-night driving, racing against the clock. This happened 3 weeks ago on a run from Billings, Montana, to a specialty lab in Bozeman. I'd picked up a cooler of time-sensitive samples around midnight and needed to have them at the lab by 4 a.m. It's normally a 2.5-hour drive on I-90, so I had time but not much room for delay. I'd made this run 100 times before. I knew the route like the back of my hand. But that night, my regular car was in the shop, so I was driving a rental. A newer model SUV with all the fancy tech, including a built-in GPS system. I programmed in the lab's address and started driving. For the first hour, everything was normal. The GPS showed me on I-90 heading west, right where I was supposed to be. The road matched the map. Everything lined up. But then, around 1:30 a.m., somewhere near Graycliff, the GPS told me to take an exit. In half a mile, take exit 377 toward Highway 212, the calm female voice announced. I frowned. That wasn't right. The route to Bozeman stayed on I-90 the whole way. Highway 212 would take me south, away from where I needed to go. Recalculating, I told the GPS, assuming it had glitched, but it just repeated the instruction. Take exit 377 toward Highway 212. I ignored it and stayed on I-90. The GPS immediately started recalculating and then said, make a U-turn when possible. No, I said out loud, feeling stupid for arguing with a machine. The lab is this way. But then I looked down at the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. According to the GPS, I wasn't on I-90 anymore. The map showed me on a completely different road. A thin, winding line labeled Route 212, cutting through what the map showed as empty wilderness. But I was on I-90. I could see the signs. I could see the mile markers. I was exactly where I thought I was. I glanced at the GPS screen again. It still showed me on Route 212, and now there was a red warning message. Dangerous conditions ahead. Alternate route recommended. My phone was in the cup holder, so I picked it up to check my Maps app. But I had no signal, not even one bar, which was weird. This stretch of I-90 usually has decent coverage. The GPS spoke again. Turn around. Return to exit 377. Danger ahead. There's no danger, I muttered. I'm on the interstate. There are no exits for miles. But even as I said it, I noticed something strange. The highway was completely empty. I hadn't seen another vehicle in over 20 minutes. No cars, no trucks, nothing. For a major interstate, even at night, that was unusual. The GPS screen flickered, and when it stabilized, the map had changed again. Now it showed me on a road that wasn't labeled at all, just a blank line cutting through a gray, featureless area, and there was a red dot ahead of me on the road, pulsing slowly. Obstacle ahead, the GPS voice said. Reduce speed. What obstacle? I said, but I slowed down anyway. From 70 to 60. Ahead of me, the highway stretched out straight and empty, illuminated by my headlights. No obstacles. Nothing. The red dot on the screen was getting closer. According to the GPS, I was maybe a quarter mile from it now. Stop, the GPS voice said, but it sounded different now. Distorted, like the sound was being stretched. You must stop. You cannot continue." I looked at the road ahead. Still nothing. Just empty pavement and darkness. The red dot was very close now, maybe a few 100 feet ahead, and then I saw it. In the middle of the road, illuminated by my headlights, was a car. An old station wagon parked perpendicular across both lanes, blocking the entire highway. There was someone standing next to it, a figure backlit by my headlights so I couldn't make out any details. I slammed on my brakes, my SUV skidding and fishtailing before coming to a stop about 50 feet from the station wagon. My heart was hammering. Where had that come from? It hadn't been there a moment ago. The road had been empty. I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the figure. They weren't moving. Just standing there beside the station wagon, completely still. The GPS screen flickered again. The red dot was now right on top of my position, and there were words on the screen, replacing the map. "Do not get out. Do not approach. Reverse." My hands were shaking as I shifted into reverse. But before I could hit the gas, the figure by the station wagon moved. They started walking toward me, moving with a strange, jerky gait that reminded me of someone walking with injured legs. I reversed, but I couldn't go fast. Backing up on a highway at night is dangerous, even without obstacles. The figure kept coming, getting closer. My headlights illuminated them better now, and what I saw made me want to scream. It was a man, or at least it had been once. His clothes were torn and stained with something dark. His face was wrong, skin too pale, eyes too wide, mouth hanging open in an expression of permanent shock. And there was something wrong with the way he moved. His legs bent at angles that weren't natural, like his knees were broken, but he was walking anyway. The GPS spoke in that distorted voice. "Faster. You must go faster." I floored it in reverse, my SUV shooting backward. The figure broke into a run, that same jerky, wrong motion, but faster now. Impossibly fast. He was covering ground at a speed no human should be able to manage. I couldn't keep reversing at this speed. I was going to hit something or lose control, but I couldn't turn around either. The highway was too narrow. And there was no shoulder, just a steep drop-off on both sides. The figure was maybe 30 feet behind me now, still running, arms outstretched like he was trying to grab the back of my SUV, and then the GPS screen went completely black. The voice spoke one more time, barely intelligible through the distortion. "Turn left. Now." "There is no left," I screamed at it. "It's a highway." But I looked, and somehow there was. A turn-off appearing out of nowhere in my headlights. A narrow dirt road cutting away from the highway into the darkness. I spun the wheel, the SUV sliding sideways as I turned. For a moment, I thought I was going to roll, but the tires caught, and I was on the dirt road, bouncing over ruts and rocks, tree branches scraping the sides of the SUV. In my rearview mirror, I could see the figure standing at the entrance to the dirt road, not following anymore. Just standing there, silhouetted against the slightly lighter darkness of the highway behind him. I drove for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 10 or 15 minutes, following the dirt road as it wound through thick forest. The GPS screen stayed black. I had no idea where I was going, no idea if this road led anywhere or if I was just getting more lost. Finally, the trees opened up, and I found myself on pavement again. A regular 2-lane highway with clear markings and reflective signs. I pulled over, my whole body shaking, and tried to figure out where I was. My phone had signal again. 1 bar, but enough. I checked my Maps app. I was on Highway 212 about 20 miles south of I-90. The GPS had been right. Somehow, impossibly, I had left the interstate and ended up on 212, even though I'd never taken an exit. I sat there for a long time trying to process what had happened. Had I fallen asleep? Had I been driving on autopilot and taken that exit without realizing it? But that didn't explain the station wagon blocking the road. Didn't explain the figure chasing me. I checked the built-in GPS. It was working normally again, showing my current location, offering to recalculate the route to Bozeman. I accepted, and it guided me back to I-90 and then west to the lab. I made my delivery just in time. I returned the rental car the next day and got my regular vehicle back from the shop. I didn't mention what had happened. Who would believe me? But I can't stop thinking about it. I've driven past that area on I-90 3 times since then, during the day. There's no station wagon, no broken figure, no mysterious dirt road, just normal highway. The same as it's always been, except yesterday I was comparing maps, trying to figure out exactly where I'd been. I was looking at satellite imagery of that stretch of I-90, zooming in on the area where I'd seen the station wagon. And I found something. A dark smudge on the pavement, right where I'd stopped. The satellite photo was dated from 2 years ago, but the smudge was clearly visible. And when I zoomed in closer, I could make out details. It was a burn mark. A long, dark stain on the highway, exactly the size and shape of a vehicle that had caught fire. I did some research. 2 years ago, there was an accident on that stretch of I-90. A station wagon had broken down in the middle of the highway late at night. The driver had gotten out to investigate the problem. Another vehicle, a semi-truck, had come around the curve and couldn't stop in time. It hit the station wagon and the driver. Then the station wagon caught fire. The driver's name was Michael Reese. He was 34 years old, married with 2 kids. The news article said he died instantly. But the photo they used, a professional headshot from his workplace, showed a smiling man with normal features and bright eyes. Not the broken, pale thing I'd seen shambling toward my SUV in the darkness. I think the GPS in that rental car knew something was wrong with that section of highway. Somehow, it knew I needed to take a different route, even though according to normal reality, I was exactly where I should be. But what was I actually on? If I wasn't on I-90, where was I? Some version of the highway that overlapped with ours, where Michael Reese is still walking around the site of his death, trying to flag down help or maybe trying to prevent others from dying the same way. I don't know. And I don't think I want to know. What I do know is that I requested a different route. I don't transport samples between Billings and Bozeman anymore. I told my dispatcher I wanted to stick to daytime runs on busy highways. Because I keep thinking about that GPS, warning me of danger that shouldn't exist. And I wonder how many other people have driven through that area late at night and seen nothing. Just a normal, empty highway. And how many people ignored warnings they might have gotten and ended up meeting Michael Reese face to face, out there in the darkness where the road doesn't quite match reality. My boyfriend Marcus and I were driving from Minneapolis to Seattle. It was supposed to be a fun road trip, breaking up the drive over 3 or 4 days, seeing some national parks, making some memories. We'd left Minneapolis early in the morning, driven through South Dakota, and stopped for the night in Rapid City. Day 2, we left Rapid City around 6 p.m., planning to drive for a few hours into Wyoming and stop at whichever town had a decent motel. It was October, and the sun set early, so by 7:30 it was full dark. We were on I-90 West, about an hour past the Wyoming border, when Marcus pointed ahead. Someone stopped up there. I could see it too, reflective triangles in the road, the kind people put out when they break down. 3 of them, spaced evenly, leading to a car on the shoulder with its hazard lights flashing. "Should we stop?" I asked. "Let me just check," Marcus said, slowing down. As we got closer, we could see it was a minivan, older model, looked like it was in rough shape, and there was someone standing next to it, a woman waving at us. Marcus pulled over about 20 feet behind the minivan. "I'll just see if she needs help," he said. "You stay here." "Marcus, it's fine. I'll just be a minute." He got out, and I watched in the side mirror as he approached the woman. They talked for a moment, then she gestured toward the front of her van. Marcus nodded and walked around to look at the engine. I pulled out my phone to check if we had signal. 2 bars. Enough to call for help if needed. That's when I noticed something weird. The reflective triangles weren't right. Normally, those things are solid orange with reflecting strips. But these were different. The reflections were too bright, almost like they were glowing, and they were arranged in a pattern that seemed deliberate. Not just a straight line, but a triangle shape, with the apex pointing toward the van. I stared at them, trying to figure out what was bothering me. And then I realized the reflections weren't reflecting from our headlights. They were glowing on their own, pulsing slowly, rhythmically. "Marcus," I called out the window. "Something's wrong with those triangles." He didn't seem to hear me. He was still leaning over the engine, the woman standing close beside him, talking. I got out of the car. "Marcus!" He looked up then, and I saw his face in the light from the engine compartment. His expression was blank. Not concerned, not confused, just blank, like he wasn't thinking anything at all. The woman turned to look at me, and that's when I got a good look at her face. She was smiling, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, stretching across her face in a way that looked painful. And her eyes were completely black. Not just the pupils, but the entire eye, like someone had filled them with ink. "Your friend is going to help me," she said, and her voice was wrong too. It had an echo to it, like multiple people speaking at once, slightly out of sync. "Marcus, get away from her," I said, my voice shaking. He didn't move, just stood there, staring at nothing. The woman's smile got wider, if that was even possible. "He walked through the triangle," she said. "Now he belongs to the road." "What?" I looked at the reflective triangles again. They were pulsing faster now, the light more intense. And I realized Marcus had walked through the pattern they made when he approached the van. He'd crossed into the space they marked. "Give him back," I demanded, though I had no idea what I was demanding or who I was demanding it from. The woman tilted her head, the motion too fluid, too boneless. Why would I do that? I've been so lonely, so hungry. The road takes and takes, but it rarely gives anything back. Your friend will keep me company. I noticed there were other figures now, standing in the darkness beyond the van. I couldn't see them clearly, but I could make out silhouettes. Lots of them. Dozens, maybe, all standing perfectly still, all watching. "You took all of them," I whispered. "The road took them," she corrected. "I just made use of what was left. All these people, stopping to help a stranger. All of them stepping into my triangle. They belong to me now." My mind was racing. I couldn't leave Marcus, but I also couldn't step into that triangle. That much was clear. If I did, I'd end up like him, blank and empty, belonging to this thing. I looked at the triangles more carefully. They formed a boundary, a marked space, like a trap. Marcus was inside that space, and I was outside it. "Let him go." I tried again. "Please." The woman laughed, and it was the most horrible sound I'd ever heard, like breaking glass mixed with screaming. "Oh, I like this one. She's polite. Maybe I'll keep her too." She started walking toward me, moving with that same too fluid motion. But she couldn't seem to cross the line of the nearest triangle. She stopped right at its edge, reaching toward me but unable to come any closer. "You'd have to come to me," she said. "Have to step across the line. I can't make you, but I can make him come back instead." Marcus started walking, not toward me, but toward the woman. His movements were jerky, puppet-like, like he wasn't controlling his own body. "Stop!" I screamed. "Marcus, fight her!" But his face remained blank. He was almost to her now, and I knew once she had full hold of him, once she pulled him deeper into whatever dark space existed inside that triangle, I'd never get him back. I did the only thing I could think of. I kicked one of the triangles. My foot connected with the reflective surface, and it went flying, skittering across the pavement and landing outside the pattern. The glow immediately dimmed. The woman shrieked, the sound so loud and so terrible I felt my eardrums throb. Marcus stumbled. His puppet strings cut, dropping to his knees. I kicked another triangle, then the third, breaking the pattern, destroying the boundary. The woman was screaming now, and so were all those other figures in the darkness. A chorus of rage and frustration. The minivan was flickering, becoming transparent, revealing something underneath. Not a vehicle, but something else. Something organic and writhing and awful that my brain couldn't quite process. "Marcus, run!" I screamed. He looked up at me, and I saw awareness return to his eyes. Fear and confusion, but awareness. He scrambled to his feet and ran, stumbling in his panic. I grabbed his arm as he reached me and pulled him toward our car. Behind us, the screaming reached a crescendo. I looked back as we reached the car and saw the woman dissolving, her body coming apart like smoke. The minivan was gone entirely now, and so were the figures in the darkness, all of it fading away, the spell broken. We got in the car, and Marcus floored it, tires squealing as we shot back onto the highway. We drove for 2 hours straight, not stopping, not talking, just putting as much distance as we could between ourselves and that place. Finally, when we reached a town with a brightly lit truck stop, we pulled in. Marcus was shaking, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. "What was that?" he finally whispered. "I don't know. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I just wasn't there. I was somewhere else. Somewhere dark and cold and full of whispers." I reached over and took his hand. "You're okay. We're okay." But we weren't, not really. How could we be after something like that? We reported it to the police the next morning, but what could we say? We told them we'd seen someone stranded and stopped to help, but the person had acted strangely and we'd left. We didn't mention the black eyes, or the glowing triangles, or the figures in the darkness. They would have thought we were crazy. Maybe we were. Maybe it was some shared delusion brought on by fatigue and the stress of long-distance driving, but I don't think so. Last week I was looking at news from Wyoming, and I saw a story that made my hands start shaking. A man had been found wandering I-90, confused and unable to remember who he was or where he'd come from. He'd been walking in the middle of the highway, nearly causing several accidents before someone managed to stop and help him. The article included a photo. I recognized him immediately. He'd been one of the figures standing in the darkness behind that minivan. They're still out there. All those people she trapped, all those people who stepped into her triangle. Somehow this man escaped, or maybe she released him, but the others are still there. And she's still there too, waiting on some dark stretch of highway for the next person to stop and help. Waiting for the next victim to step into her pattern. If you're ever driving late at night and you see reflective triangles in the road, look at them carefully. Really carefully. Make sure they're just normal safety equipment reflecting your headlights. Because if they're glowing on their own, if they're arranged in a pattern that seems too perfect, too deliberate, don't stop. Don't try to help. Just keep driving. Some people on the road don't need help. They need victims. And the road is always hungry for more. I'm a truck driver. Been hauling freight across the country for 20 years now. I've seen a lot in that time. Crazy weather, dangerous drivers, weird rest stops in the middle of nowhere. But nothing prepared me for what I experienced on I-35 in Kansas. This was about 2 months ago. I was heading south from Kansas City to Wichita, hauling a load of furniture. It was around 3 in the morning and the highway was pretty empty. Just me and the occasional car, the prairie stretching out dark and flat on both sides. I was maybe an hour south of Emporia when I started noticing something strange about the cars ahead of me. They'd be visible for a while, their taillights clear in the distance, and then they'd disappear. Not gradually, like they'd taken an exit or turned off their lights. Just gone, in an instant. At first, I figured I was just tired, not tracking things properly. But it kept happening. I'd see a car ahead of me. I'd drive for a few minutes, and then it would vanish. 4 or 5 times in a row. I was getting concerned. Maybe there was an accident up ahead that I wasn't aware of. Or maybe these cars were swerving off the road. So I stayed alert, watching carefully for any problems. That's when I saw it happen in real time. There was a sedan ahead of me, maybe a quarter mile up. I could see its taillights clearly. It was approaching an overpass, one of those concrete bridges that carries a local road over the interstate. The car went under the overpass, and it never came out the other side. I blinked, sure I was seeing wrong. But no, the road on the other side of that overpass was empty. The car had entered the space under the bridge and simply ceased to exist. My first thought was that it had pulled over right under the overpass, maybe had some kind of emergency. But that didn't make sense. I would have seen brake lights, would have seen it on the shoulder as I passed. I slowed down as I approached the overpass, my heart pounding. It looked like a normal overpass. Concrete pillars, concrete bridge deck, nothing unusual about it. But as I got closer, I started to notice details that were wrong. The space under the bridge was too dark. Even with my headlights, I couldn't see through to the other side. It was like driving toward a wall of darkness. And there was something written on the concrete pillars. Spray paint, crude letters that looked like they had been applied in a hurry. Don't stop and keep driving, and it takes you. My truck was almost to the overpass now. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to stop, to turn around, to do anything except drive under that bridge. But I was in an 18-wheeler hauling 40,000 pounds of cargo. I couldn't just stop in the middle of the highway, and there was no exit nearby. So I kept going. I entered that darkness under the overpass, and everything changed. The sound disappeared first. The rumble of my engine, the hum of tires on the pavement, even the sound of my own breathing, all of it went silent in an instant. It was like someone had pressed a mute button on the entire world. Then the temperature dropped. It had been a mild October night, maybe 55 degrees. Under that overpass, it felt like it was below zero. My breath fogged in the air, and frost started forming on the inside of my windshield, and I could see them, the cars, all the cars that had disappeared. They were there in the darkness under the overpass, parked at weird angles like someone had just abandoned them in the middle of the road. Dozens of them, maybe 100. Sedans, trucks, SUVs, even a few motorcycles, all sitting empty and silent, and among them, figures. Human shapes, standing perfectly still next to the vehicles, facing my truck as I passed. I couldn't make out features in the darkness, but I could feel them watching me. Dozens of pairs of eyes, tracking my movement through that space. My truck was still moving. I hadn't touched the brake, hadn't changed speed, but it felt like I was driving through syrup, like the air itself had become thick and resistant. Every second felt like a minute. Every foot of distance felt like a mile. I could see the end of the overpass ahead now, a circle of normal darkness that seemed impossibly far away. My truck was crawling toward it, and those figures were starting to move. Slowly at first, then faster, walking alongside my truck, keeping pace even though I was doing 50 miles per hour. One of them reached out and touched my passenger window. I heard it even through the silence. A sound like fingernails on a chalkboard, but deeper, resonating in my chest. The window cracked, a spiderweb of fractures spreading from where it had touched. I wanted to scream, wanted to floor the accelerator, wanted to do anything, but all I could do was keep steady pressure on the gas pedal and pray that I'd make it through. The figures were all around my truck now, dozens of them, all reaching out to touch it. I could hear that horrible scraping sound from every direction. My mirrors shattered, more windows cracked, and then, suddenly, I was through. Out the other side of the overpass, back into normal darkness, normal sound, normal temperature. I gasped, sucking in air like I'd been holding my breath. I looked in my remaining mirrors. The overpass looked normal. Just concrete and shadows. No figures, no abandoned cars, just an ordinary bridge. But my truck was damaged. All the windows on the passenger side were cracked. My mirrors were shattered, and when I stopped at the next truck stop to inspect the damage, I found something else. Handprints. Dozens of them, pressed into the metal of my trailer like someone had pushed hard enough to leave dents. But they weren't normal handprints. The proportions were wrong, fingers too long, palms too narrow, and they were ice cold. Even after I'd been driving for an hour, even after the metal should have warmed up, those handprints stayed cold enough to hurt when I touched them. I reported the damage to my company, said I'd been vandalized at a rest stop. They filed an insurance claim. I didn't tell them what really happened. Who would believe me? But I did some research. I started looking into that overpass, trying to find out if anyone else had experienced something similar. What I found terrified me. There have been 17 unsolved disappearances on that stretch of I-35 over the past decade. 17 people who were driving through that area late at night and simply vanished. Their cars were never found. No wreckage, no evidence of foul play. They just disappeared, and going back further, through old newspaper archives, I found dozens more. Reports going back to the 1970s, shortly after that overpass was built. People vanishing on I-35. Always late at night, always in that same general area. One article included an interview with a construction worker who'd helped build the overpass. He claimed they'd uncovered something while excavating for the foundation. Something old, buried deep in the earth. He wouldn't say what it was, just that the foreman had ordered them to cover it back up and not talk about it. The worker quit 2 weeks later and refused to say anything more about it. According to the article, he'd developed severe anxiety and couldn't go near highways anymore. I've driven that route twice since then, both times during the day. The overpass looks completely normal in daylight. No spray-painted warnings, no sense of wrongness, just a regular concrete bridge. But I'll never drive under it at night again. I've rerouted my regular runs to avoid that section of highway after dark. It costs me an extra hour, but I don't care, because I can still see them when I close my eyes. Those figures standing in the darkness, watching with whatever passes for eyes in that place. And I can still feel them touching my truck, leaving their marks in the metal, and I wonder about all those cars I saw, all those abandoned vehicles sitting in that impossible space under the overpass. Were the drivers still there too? Had they been unable to drive through like I did? Had they stopped or slowed down and gotten trapped? I think about the 17 people who disappeared. About all the others going back decades. And I wonder if they're still there, standing in that darkness, waiting, watching for the next car to pass through. If you ever drive I-35 through Kansas late at night, pay attention to the overpasses. Most of them are safe. Most of them are just bridges. But there's one about an hour south of Emporia. That's different. You'll know it when you see it. The darkness under it is too deep. The temperature drops as you approach. And if you look carefully, you might see warnings spray-painted on the pillars. If you see those warnings, trust them. Don't stop. Keep driving no matter what you see or hear. Don't slow down. Don't look too closely at the space under the bridge. Just drive through as fast as you can and hope you make it to the other side, because not everyone does. The overpass takes some of them, and I don't think they ever find their way back. My name is Sarah, and I'm a nurse. I work night shifts at a hospital in Portland, Oregon, and I usually get off around 7 in the morning. It's a 45-minute drive from the hospital to my house in a suburb on the eastern edge of the city. This happened last month at the end of an exhausting 12-hour shift. I was tired, running on coffee and adrenaline, counting down the minutes until I could get home and sleep. When 7 a.m. finally rolled around, I clocked out, got in my car, and headed for the interstate. It was foggy that morning. Really foggy. The kind of thick gray fog that turns the whole world into a blank canvas. Visibility was maybe 50 feet at best. I took it slow, keeping a careful eye on the road and the tail lights of any cars ahead of me. I merged onto I-84 East, the route I took every single day. But almost immediately, something felt wrong. The fog seemed thicker than it should be. Not just thick, but somehow wrong. The wrong color, maybe, or the wrong texture. It pressed against my windshield like it was trying to get inside the car. I turned on my headlights, and the fog seemed to swallow the light. Instead of illuminating the road ahead, my headlights just made the fog glow, turning everything into an even more opaque white-gray mass. I slowed down to 35, then 30. I couldn't see the road markings anymore. Couldn't see any other cars, even though I knew there must be traffic. It was rush hour, and I-84 was usually packed with commuters. But it was like I was completely alone. Just me and the fog and the faint sense of pavement beneath my tires. I tried to turn on the radio, looking for a traffic report that might mention the fog, but all I got was static. Every station, just static. I switched to my phone's Bluetooth and tried to play some music, but my phone showed no signal, no bars, no data, nothing. "Come on," I muttered, starting to feel genuine fear now. This wasn't normal. Even in heavy fog, you could usually hear other cars, horns honking, engines rumbling, but there was nothing. Just silence and fog. I kept driving, following what I thought was the road. I should have been passing exit signs, landmarks, anything familiar. But there was nothing, just fog. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only 15 or 20 minutes, I saw something ahead. A shape in the fog, darker than the gray-white around it. As I got closer, I realized it was another car, parked on the shoulder. I pulled up behind it and stopped. Maybe whoever it was could tell me what was going on, or if they had a working phone I could borrow. I got out of my car, and the fog immediately wrapped around me like a blanket. It was cold. Much colder than it should have been for a September morning in Portland. "Hello," I called out. My voice sounded flat, absorbed by the fog. No response. I walked closer to the car, a dark-colored sedan with its hazard lights off. The driver's door was open, hanging ajar, but there was no one inside. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. And then I heard it. A voice coming from somewhere in the fog ahead of me. "Help me, please help me." It was a woman's voice, frightened and desperate. Every instinct I have as a nurse kicked in. Someone was in trouble. I had to help. "Where are you?" I called, walking forward into the fog. "I can't see," the voice said. "I can't find my car. I've been walking for so long." I kept moving toward the voice, my phone out, using its flashlight even though it barely penetrated the fog. "Keep talking. I'll find you." "Please hurry. There's something else in the fog. Something that's following me." My skin prickled. "What do you mean?" "I don't know what it is. I just know it's there. I can hear it breathing." I stopped walking. That was when I realized I couldn't see my car anymore. I'd only walked maybe 30 or 40 feet, but the fog was so thick I'd lost sight of everything. My car, the abandoned sedan, the road itself. I was standing in a white-gray void with no reference points. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice rising in panic. "I'm right here," the voice said, and it was closer now. Much closer, right behind me. I spun around, and there was a figure standing in the fog, not the woman I'd been expecting. This was a man, tall and thin, wearing a long coat that seemed to blend into the fog itself. His face was obscured. Nothing but shadows where his features should be. "You shouldn't have gotten out of your car," he said, and his voice was the woman's voice, the exact same frightened, desperate tone. He'd been imitating her. I ran, just turned and sprinted into the fog, not caring about direction, just trying to get away. Behind me, I could hear footsteps, steady, unhurried footsteps. He wasn't running. He didn't need to. He knew I couldn't escape. I ran for what felt like forever, my lungs burning, my legs aching. But no matter how far I went, the fog never changed, never thinned. I never found my car, never found the road, never found anything except more fog. Finally, I couldn't run anymore. I stopped, doubled over, gasping for breath, and I listened. Silence, no footsteps, no breathing except my own. "Where am I?" I whispered to the empty fog. "You're in between," a voice said, and I nearly screamed. But this wasn't the man's voice. This was different. Older, tired. Between the world you know and the world underneath, the fog brought you here. I turned slowly. There was an old woman standing a few feet away, barely visible in the fog. She looked solid enough, but something about her seemed faded, like a photograph that had been left in the sun too long. "How do I get back?" I asked. "Most people don't," she said sadly. "The fog takes them and they wander until they become part of it. Like me. Like him." She gestured vaguely behind me, where the tall figure had been. "There has to be a way out." "There is. But you have to find your anchor, the thing that ties you to the real world. For some people it's a place. For others it's a person. You have to remember what's waiting for you on the other side. Remember it so clearly that it pulls you back." I thought about my house. About my cat, Milo, who would be waiting for me. About my sister, who I was supposed to have dinner with tomorrow. About my job, my life, everything that existed outside this impossible fog. "How do I find my way?" I asked. "Close your eyes," the old woman said. "Stop trying to see. The fog confuses your eyes. But your heart knows the way home." It sounded like nonsense, but I was desperate enough to try anything. I closed my eyes and stood there in the fog, thinking about home, about Milo curled up on the couch, about the sound of my front door opening, about the smell of coffee brewing in my kitchen. And then I started walking. Eyes closed, arms outstretched, trusting nothing but the pull I felt in my chest, a sense of direction that had nothing to do with sight or logic. I walked for a long time. I could hear things in the fog around me, whispers, footsteps, breathing. But I didn't open my eyes. I just kept walking, kept focusing on home. And then I felt pavement under my feet, rough, cold pavement. And I heard something, the distant sound of a car horn. I opened my eyes. I was standing on the shoulder of I-84 in normal fog. Thick fog, yes, but normal. I could see the road. I could see traffic passing, cars with their hazard lights on, moving slowly, but moving. And 20 feet away was my car, still parked where I'd left it behind, that abandoned sedan. The sedan was gone. I got back in my car with shaking hands and drove home. The fog cleared as I got closer to the city, and by the time I reached my house, it was a normal September morning. Slightly overcast, but nothing unusual. Milo was waiting at the door, meowing for breakfast. Everything in my house was exactly as I'd left it. Normal. Real. Safe. I called in sick to work that night. I couldn't face driving back, couldn't face the thought of getting on that interstate. I needed time to process what had happened, to convince myself it was real and not some hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But I know it was real, because when I got home that morning, my shoes were wet, soaking wet, like I'd been walking through deep water. But it hadn't rained. The fog had been dry. My shoes smelled like the fog, like cold metal and old earth and something else. Something wrong. It took me 3 weeks before I could make myself drive to work again. And when I did, I took a different route. Surface streets, avoiding the interstate entirely. It adds 20 minutes to my commute, but I don't care. Because I did some research and I found others who've experienced the same thing. Posts on obscure forums, half-deleted Reddit threads, old blog entries. People who've gotten lost in the fog on highways and found themselves somewhere else. Somewhere in between. Most of them made it back, like I did. But some didn't. Some wrote about being lost for days or weeks, wandering through endless fog, unable to find their way home. And some of the posts just stop midway through. The person was typing about being lost, about seeing figures in the fog, and then nothing. No more posts, no more activity, like they vanished while writing. I don't drive in the fog anymore. If it's foggy when I get off work, I stay at the hospital until it clears. I'll sleep in the break room if I have to. Anything to avoid getting back on that highway when the fog is thick. Because I know it's still out there, that place in between, and I know there are things living in it, things that used to be people, maybe but aren't anymore. Things like that tall man who spoke with a woman's voice, who was trying to trick me into walking deeper into the fog. And I know that some fogs are just weather, but some fogs are doorways, thresholds between our world and places we were never meant to see. If you're ever driving and you hit a fog bank that feels wrong, too thick, too cold, too silent, turn around. Find another route. Wait for it to clear, because once you're in it, once you're pulled into that place in between, finding your way back isn't guaranteed. Most people don't make it. They wander forever, becoming more and more faded, until they're nothing but whispers and shadows. And eventually, they become the things that call out from the fog. The voices that try to lure new people in. The figures that walk with steady, unhurried footsteps, knowing their prey can't escape. I was lucky. I found my way home. But I left something of myself in that fog. A piece of me that never made it back. And sometimes, on foggy mornings, I can feel it. A pulling sensation, like something is calling me back. Asking me to return to that place in between. I resist it. I stay home on foggy days. I avoid the interstate, but the pulling gets stronger each time, and I'm afraid that one day I won't be strong enough to resist. One day the fog will take me again, and this time I won't find my way back. That's all for tonight. Thank you for listening to these stories, for making it through the darkness with me. If you enjoyed these tales from the midnight hours of America's interstates, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And remember, next time you're driving alone at night and something feels wrong, trust your instincts. The road remembers, and sometimes the road doesn't let go. Sleep well, if you can.